menace to sobriety. Just a menace, just a menace, just a menace.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Menace to Sobriety with your host Daniel O'Reilly, aka the comedian Dapper Laughs. This is your go-to podcast for all of you out there that are sober curious, or just like the look of my face, basically, and interesting conversations. For those of you that are tuning in for the first time, this podcast has kind of documented my journey through sobriety. It's sort of my way of learning and talking about everything sober, and I'm really excited for the next guest that I've got coming on. He's a life coach for men, and we had a little brief chat outside and started getting into things, so I'm very excited. Let's get straight into it. First up, welcome Patrick Fox.
Yes, how you doing, man? Good to be here.
I'm good. You're used to this. You've got your own podcast, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
What's it called again?
The Alcohol Rethink podcast.
Right, okay. And first up, let me just get this in here because I'm gloating. Yes, by the time this goes out, over a year sober. Woo! Thank you. And got a card. Thank you from Patrick here. You're pretty fucking awesome. Keep that shit up. Congratulations on 1 year no drinking. So awesome. Your journey and podcast are inspiring so many people. Sobriety is truly the gift that keeps on giving. That's so true. Take care and be kind to yourself. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I thought that was quite poignant because there's a few little nuggets in there.
Yeah, well, I weren't expecting you to read it out straight away. So.
Sorry, yeah.
Or at all.
Yeah, it's a good thing that it didn't say something like, you want to go for a line? Yeah. No, but look, take care and be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
That stuck in my mind because sobriety, we beat ourselves up a lot in there. Before we get into, the podcast, I guess, tell us a little bit about what you do, what your podcast is about, and just your story, man. How you sort of become sober. Just introduce yourself to the guests and let's get started.
Yeah, cool. Well, I'll tell you about what I do after I tell you about how I got there. Probably.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so coming up 5 years actually. December is when I stopped drinking. It was after I went out Boxing Day in 2018. That was the last time I had a drink. And I'll tell you about that story, right?
Yeah.
And then we can talk about before that story. But on that Boxing Day, or in that month of December, actually, it was pretty crazy. It was like a really full-on month. I call December silly season, right? Like just going out, getting on the sesh all the time.
Yeah.
So I started a month, went to some work Christmas do, got really quite drunk, wore some new shoes, and we were jumping over this wall. When I woke up in the morning, my shoes were all scuffed up and stuff. It's like, why am I jumping over a wall, man? Like I'm a 30-year-old dude or whatever. But that night I went home and I had some gear because I was going to a football game the next day. And I woke up and I'd obviously thought about doing it, but I woke up and there was all this gear all over me because I was gone to do a line, but didn't bother because I'd fallen asleep. So I was so drunk by that stage. And then the next day went to an away game went to Leicester to watch the football, and at 10:30 in the morning I was doing gear on the toilet on the way to the game, just feeling absolutely terrible. And that kind of was what life was like, to be honest. And all through December, there was lots of other little occasions where I was going out and getting smashed. And then there was a Christmas event that we go to with the family and stuff. And on the Saturday, I'd been out all night and stuff, had limited sleep, and just remember being there, just feeling pretty terrible, pretty low about myself and stuff. And during that month, I was feeling a bit shit, and I spoke to one of my best mates, and he told me about this book called This Naked Mind. Probably familiar with it, right? By Annie Grace.
No, I'm not.
It's really good book. Anyone out there, go check it out. It will change your life.
Called?
This Naked Mind.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and it's all about how the mind works, the truth about alcohol and stuff, things that we have kind of limited knowledge of a lot of the time. So I started reading that. So things had started happening, right? I started questioning my alcohol use. It was getting boring. It was quite monotonous. I was going out a lot, but not really enjoying it. I just wanted to go out. That was the thing. And then we got a new dog, new puppy. So just kind of set the scene. I got a brand new puppy, 1-year-old child and an 8-year-old daughter as well. And so I had a lot of responsibilities, a lot of things going on. And the Christmas day, I chose not to drink because we had this puppy. So I went out and I maybe had one beer or whatever. And then so Boxing Day came around and I was like, do you know what?
It's Christmas.
I didn't drink yesterday. I'm going to go out and get on it today. Feeling really entitled, really felt like I'd been deprived from having a good drink up on Christmas and stuff.
Yeah.
So I went to the football. We ended up winning the game. So that was extra emphasis to carry on drinking after the game and stuff because you've got to celebrate when you win, right? So we went to the pub, and I was in the pub, and 4 or 5 beers in, I used to get that kind of thought in my head, like, oh, I need to get some gear now. I need to I didn't really like getting drunk. I didn't like the feeling of being drunk a lot of the time. So I'd use drugs to try and
make it better.
Yeah, right. Try and extend it so that I was still kind of conscious of what I was doing. I just wasn't completely blacking out and stuff. So we were in the pub that night, and I'm making all these phone calls, going through my phone book, asking people in the pub if they knew anyone who could get it. It's fucking Boxing Day, man. What am I thinking? And then my phone started dying. So I went over to the shop and I bought a charger, and that didn't work. So I'm getting more anxious, thinking that I'm going to miss this phone call that I'm going to get. And luckily it didn't happen. I didn't get anything that night. But just before I left, I went home. I had a horrible shot of some mini Guinness thing. I can't remember what it's called. And then I woke up the next day, and I woke up and I thought, I feel absolutely terrible. I'm just so sick of this stuff, man. I'm absolutely done with it. I remember my girlfriend came in. I said, I can't do this anymore. I literally can't do this anymore. And so that point there, I was like, I'm gonna take a break. I'm gonna do 1 year no beer. That was kind of like that. I was aware of that program, but also aware of that kind of, I like the idea of it. Thinking, well, if I take a break from alcohol, let me see what it's like. Let me just take a break and see what's like. Because really, surely it can't be any worse than it is now, right?
Yeah.
And that's how it kind of started. So that was me taking a break.
It's such an interesting. I get so many different guests on and speak so many. When you look at the different reasons why people, and normally there's a massive rock bottom. Someone's almost died, or you're getting left, or and all that. And it's so interesting because you're just describing what people fucking do. Yeah. It's just what people do and what is considered the norm. And how many times people have genuinely woke up and gone, I just don't want to do it anymore. I ain't doing it again. And next weekend they're doing exactly the same thing and don't even realise that they're in active addiction. Yeah. And then you made the choice, right? And what a great time, because you've got a new year coming up. It's like, you're like, right, I can try and I can see the fucking goalposts. I can try and do it. So how did that? Were you already a life coach at that point or not?
So I was, but I wasn't, because I trained and certified back in 2015. So this is 2018 now. But at that time I was still drinking and going out every weekend. So I didn't have very good self-esteem. I wasn't very, I enjoyed coaching and I knew it was helpful. Yeah. But it wasn't very congruent. I wasn't doing what I was saying, and I just didn't believe in myself. So it's far easier just to kind of slip back into going out all the time. But it's good that you mentioned that, because that was probably when I first started kind of taking little mini breaks from drinking. I'll go a couple of weeks or a weekend, and remembering at the time how much of a big deal it was. But then over time, just gradually went back into habit, right? Just going out every weekend, living for the weekend.
So your first year, talk me through it. How was that?
Yeah, it was challenging, certainly in the beginning, man. I've got a journal at home I kept from that first year. I didn't write it every day, but I wrote a few notes. I was really low, man. That first month or two, pretty shit. Obviously it's January, it's, blasted all your money anyway. So it was kind of challenging for me. And I remember being about a month or two in and thinking at the time, I want to do something with my life. I'm not just going to stop drinking and not do anything else. So that's when the bug for coaching came back in. And that was pivotal, man, because all of this time and energy that I now had from not going out and getting fucked all the time, I had to put back into something else. Yeah. So I started applying myself to that. And that first year, there was a few kind of really significant things that happened for me. First one was we went to a party. I think it was February or March time. It was a party in the local town centre. And I went, and zero beers had just come out, actually. So I was having a zero beer, but I just sat down the whole night. And I remember having a conversation with someone who was interested about why I wasn't drinking and stuff. And it got to about 10 or 11 p.m, right? I'd been there for a few hours. And then I kind of made my way to the dance floor, and I just stood by the side, watching everyone just dancing and having a laugh and stuff. And then kind of thinking that I was missing out a little bit and isolating myself. And then the particular track came on. I can't remember what it was. It's an old school track, and it came on, and I thought, do you know what? I'm just gonna get up and dance. And I got up on that dance floor and I started dancing, And when I did that, I realized like no one was even paying any attention to me. Like I was just like fully immersed in the music in that moment. And
It's mad.
yeah, and just came away after doing that. And it was like such a big thing to be able to do that.
I'm going to stop you there because I know that feeling.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I describe it as being like, you feel like you're the elephant in the room, right?
Yeah.
But actually, you're actually the elephant in the room in your own life. It's weird. And I had that very same experience at a barbecue when everyone started getting drunk, and I was very much like, oh fuck, they all know that I'm not drinking, and I'm the odd one out here that's not having fun, and da 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 da. And that is such a pivotal moment in the sobriety where your old mind is desperate to not change. It's trying to pull you back in, and you're still romanticizing about the alcohol. And also, like, it is weird being in those environments sober, because when was the last time you was in that environment sober?
Yeah.
Ever?
Barely remember a time. Yeah.
Yeah, like we spoke downstairs before we came up here, and you were saying about your trip to Sheffield, right?
Yeah.
And you're in different situations. And now when you're wandering around and you're like sort of experiencing life, everything that's going on in the day, and you're like really in it, like you're present and you're experiencing and you're feeling and you're talking and you're sort of soaking everything up. But what we used to think was, at the beginning of our sobriety, we'd think, this is really difficult without a drink. I'm not really enjoying this without a drink. But when you're drinking, are you really enjoying it, or are you just drinking?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's surreal, isn't it?
Yeah.
How did you overcome that? Or was that a good shifting point for you?
Yeah, it was a really big shifting point for me. It's like, oh, I can go out and dance and it's not a problem, you know? Because
no one's going to go, well, oh, he ain't drinking and he's dancing.
Yeah, right, yeah. Yeah, like one of the guys I work with, he describes it as like having a spotlight on you and it just following you around everywhere. That's like what we
That's
think
what it feels
is happening.
like, yeah.
It's what we think's happening, but it's not, man. Like
no one gives a
no, we're all just in our own heads. Like we're just doing our own thing, thinking what everyone else is thinking. And so that was huge for me. Like I really saw that as like a turning moment. Then in April, we had a trip booked to go to Amsterdam.
Holidays are big, aren't they?
Yeah, a trip to Amsterdam.
Amsterdam as well.
Yeah, right. I've been there like 5 or 6 times before, and not once, sobriety was far away.
I can't imagine what the point is of going to Amsterdam unless you're going to sniff, smoke, or
yeah,
and not your wife.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like that's what it's about over there.
Yeah, it's weird.
And we did that. It was a couple's holiday actually, and we went and again, I like just got stuck into the 0 beers, drank a lot of coffee. There was a few times like we were in coffee shops and stuff, and I'm like, I could just have a spliff, like no one's really going to know. Like, is a spliff's not drinking, so surely that's okay. But for me in my head, it's like when I thought 1 year no beer, it wasn't just about the beer. It was like treating myself in a
good way,
kind and compassionate way. Yeah, right. Like not doing drugs, not even smoking and stuff like that. So, yeah. Navigated my way through that holiday. And so every time I did these things, right, like my confidence is going up. It's like, actually, yeah, I can go out and have a holiday without drinking. I can go and dance without drinking. And then through that year, I went to a wedding, sober wedding.
Triggers.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And alcohol's free flowing, man. Like it's absolutely everywhere, just from the get-go, like because it's so acceptable to just start drinking on the morning of a wedding, right? Doesn't matter what part of the party you are.
No, that makes me feel. Isn't it weird how that makes? I mean, John, the producer, come in talking about going for a wedding and John hasn't got a problem with drink or he's not sober, but you'll be drinking, won't you?
Yeah, I mean. There will be drinks. I'm not intending to get hammered. I don't really do that anymore. Basically, since I'm no longer single, I don't care about getting hammered because that was always about being single and hooking up with people. But like there'll be probably like a little like toast before. Like I mean there will be it, but I'm not going to the wedding thinking about looking forward to drinking. It's just like it will be around.
See, that's the difference. Bring the camera back over here. That's the difference between me and John, because if one of my mates was getting married back in the day, I'd be like, we're going to get. That's the difference. He's not even thinking about it. I'll be excited on the lead up to it, and I'll probably be like, I was saying, who's getting the gear in, and I'll be excited about it. But I've got such bad what's the word? I mean, weddings trigger me, man. Like, it's my own wedding. I got shame and guilt around how smashed I got at my own wedding. But I haven't been to a wedding since I've been sober. So I am a bit nervous about that. And we were talking about this outside. Not nervous like, oh my God, I'm going to drink. Yeah. Because I've got no desire to drink or to use drugs. but more like, how's it going to make me feel? And again, even down to the thing like, oh, is anyone even going to want me there because I ain't drinking? Or are people going to notice I'm not having a good time? Or, well, that's even weird me saying that, because it's like I'm kind of even saying that I'm not going to have a good time because I'm in my own head here now.
Yeah, right.
Do you know what I mean? It's
That's exactly what happens, though, isn't it? We start getting really self-conscious. We start like thinking what everyone else is thinking, when really it's just what we're thinking about ourselves.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I almost don't want to go to a wedding. It's so weird, isn't it? What happens?
Well, yeah, and I reckon because, you know, you're just comparing
To
what's
mine.
happened in the past. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
But that's why, like, I'm such a massive advocate of like creating evidence, right? Like going out and kind of like I'm describing here
Yeah.
in my journey. But it's about going out and showing yourself that you can
do
do
it.
these things. Yeah.
Like you say about Amsterdam, Mexico. I recently went to Mexico, and fine, the whole, you know, bit nervous, but once I got into it, and at the end of it, I'm like you said, creating evidence. I
Yeah.
walked away from that going, right, I can do holidays.
Yeah. That's it, man. Like now holidays are done.
Yeah, holidays are good. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah, anyway, so you've done a Christmas as well, right? Like you've done a birthday, like you've done all of these things, like all of a sudden, I call them sober firsts, right?
Yeah.
It's about getting all these sober firsts under your belt and like
Yeah.
showing yourself, because now you've got something different to compare it to, right? But often we're just thinking about all the that we've done in the past.
Yeah.
So that's passive.
Go on, carry on. Sorry, mate.
Yeah, no, you're good. And so I did Amsterdam. That was in like April time of the year. I think the wedding was in August. My birthday was in September.
So many like
Yeah, like
bombs.
big things, man. And then there was Christmas, and I think Christmas I definitely had a little bit of anxiety around, because you're like, what am I going to do? Because this is all I've ever done before. Like,
So true.
as I mentioned earlier, this silly season for me, like December was about working as little as possible,
Drinking as
as
much.
much. Yeah. So it was a really weird time to get through, and I think I ended up like eating loads through that month just as a way to kind of like deal and navigate through it. And that was it. And so that's kind of like a year. There's probably lots of other things in there, but
So it's really interesting. So you do your life coaching for men around alcohol as well.
yeah.
What would you say? Say, for instance, I'm sat in front of you and I'm like, right, so I'm going sober. Christmas is coming, is coming, everything's coming. What advice would you give to people? How do you get them to change their ways? What do you say? How does it work?
Yeah, well, I've got a few different ways, man. I think understanding why you don't want to drink or why you want to cut back on your drinking is really, really important. But I think some of the times what we do is we think about like the short-term reasons of why, but actually when you can start thinking beyond the why, when you can start thinking like what the impact of you not drinking is going to be. You know, for me, when I stopped drinking, like on that morning I woke up on the sofa for the last time, I was ashamed of myself, and I was thinking like, I'm turning into the person I promised myself I'd never be. I'm turning into like, my dad had a problem with alcohol, he probably still does, I'm not sure, but I didn't want to be that guy. And that was like motivation for me. So it wasn't just about stopping drinking, although it was, but it was also about like how I wanted to show up afterwards, how I wanted to be a dad and a partner, and what I wanted to do with my life.
So what you're asking people to do, and this is the hard thing, man, and I feel like I'm kind of getting there, mastering. This is the hard thing. You're asking people to think differently.
Yeah.
You're asking people to think, to not think about, or how am I not going to drink? Thinking about, how do I want to be? Like, and I gave you an example outside, but I was talking about the golfing holiday. I had a lot of messages from people saying, you know, how did you manage to go away with your mates and but in real time I was looking at, well, I wouldn't have been able to FaceTime my wife from the bedroom, you know, when I'd arrived at the hotel on the first day. I'd done the FaceTime, spoke to my wife, and the kids were jumping around in the background. Sorry about the screen, by the way, guys. It's like, it keeps cutting off, but don't worry. But yeah, and the kids were jumping around, and it was just this really powerful for me, just simply looking at them and then being able to be realistic and go, it's 5 o'clock on the first day of my holiday, and in the afternoon where was I can't remember now. I can't remember where I went. Where did I go? Portugal, I think. And it's 5 o'clock, and I'm in the hotel room FaceTiming. I know it's so trivial, but there's no way I would have done that, because I would have got at the airport, on the plane. I would have been excited about landing. Let's go out and get and they would have heard from me.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's how So basically, I'm finding it difficult to talk today. I might have had too much coffee, but basically changing, instead of sat there going, what am I not doing? I'm sitting there going, oh, it's amazing that I'm doing this.
Exactly, yeah. And that's it. That's that complete shift. And it's not trivial, man. Like, I think it's fucking amazing because it's all of those little things that add up. Like they're all of the reasons like why you're choosing not to drink anymore.
Yeah.
And that's massive.
Yeah.
I mean, it can be difficult to see them like in the beginning, right? Because you've got to unlearn the desire for alcohol and stuff like that. But like when you can start focusing on what you're getting instead of what you're losing, like that's when that change becomes so much easier.
That's important, isn't it? Focusing on what you're getting, not what you're losing. It's like instead of looking at what you're missing out on, looking at what you're free from as well.
Exactly, free. Yeah, I mean that word's huge.
When you just said then, you said teaching people to unlearn, what was that?
The desire.
So how do you teach
desire.
someone to unlearn the desire for alcohol?
Yeah, so we desire alcohol, right? We think that we need it. It's a lot to do with how the brain works, dopamine. So dopamine, when we have dopamine, our brain thinks it's important for our survival. It goes like back to evolution of humankind.
Really?
Yeah, right. So think about when we were living in the wilderness or whatever, like we couldn't just pop down a shop to get some shopping, or we could, all these things. So when we were living out in the wild, we had to have our wits about us, right? Because otherwise we'd end up dying. Yeah, we get eaten. So we had to know where food was. We have to know where warmth was. We'd have to procreate and all of these things. And every time we do that, we get dopamine, and then the brain remembers that. It goes like, okay, so we got food here the last time, so we can go back there and there might be food there the next time, right? And that's what happens with alcohol. Like our brain thinks it's important. Like we genuinely think we need it. And I think that word need is always really telling, right? Like when you think you need something, it's like, okay, do I really need it? Or is that my brain getting all malfunctioning?
We just spoke about it outside.
Yeah, right.
Like yesterday, Sunday, when I was just, well, actually it's Friday now on the podcast, but we're recording it on a Monday. But when I was relaxing at home, I was like lying on the couch, like I need something. Like I need something. It's probably a hobnob, chocolate hobnob. Yeah, I'm going to go and see if it's a hobnob. Yeah, I needed the hobnob. It's like we need something. So what you're saying is our brain used to get rewarded when we'd done what we're supposed to do. So going and finding the food, the berries, or killing the animal and getting the food, or running away from the saber-toothed tiger, you get the adrenaline rush and you're like, well, your brain goes, oh, if you do this, you're rewarded with this. And what happened? Go on.
Well, that's basically everything. Like, other than the camera's doing some weird locking in my eye, about to get.
You look like a cyborg.
Yeah. I feel that one. But yeah, no, so basically that's the whole thing, is like anything that we get addicted to is hijacked our reward system. So like gambling, that's a super stimulus of your dopamine. Like pornography, that's like super stimulus of like dopamine that you get when having sex. Like sugar, all of it is just that being hijacked, which is like you said, we've evolved to experience it in moderation. But when we have these new stimuluses in this environment, that's when it gets out of control, basically, as from my understanding.
Yeah, nailed it. And look at the society we live in, man. Like we don't have to want for anything. We could just go get it in the drop of a heartbeat, or just switch on your phone, whatever, right? And that's not how we were evolved. It's not how we're supposed to live. So yeah, like we create a lot of importance. We think alcohol is important for us. We've got a lot of evidence of why it's important, like because it makes us have fun, a good time, and like all the other stuff. And our brain kind of filters out all the bad a lot of the time, just remembers the good stuff. So yeah, that's how we kind of create that dependency almost. Like we think we need it. We think it's doing something for us.
So how do I unteach that?
By going out and creating evidence, right? Like you got to go. You got to go out and show yourself that you don't. Maybe I can go out and not have to have a drink. A lot of it is understanding like how our thoughts create our feelings, right? Like what we think creates an emotion. That emotion creates an action, and then it's kind of like think, feel, act cycle. And so it's understanding what that is. So when I'm working with guys, like we want to understand why you want to stop drinking, but we also want to understand what do you believe about alcohol? Like what do you think it's doing for you? What's it giving you? What do you think you're giving up when you think about not having alcohol?
Yeah, just sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
It's so interesting because I'm like this whole journey of sobriety for me has all been about thinking. It's this whole journey from beginning to end. When anyone asks me about it, I'm always like saying stuff like, from what I've learned, it's like retraining, understanding your triggers and realizing they're not triggers, they're just thoughts, right?
Yeah.
That you don't have to respond to. And it's like, am I right in thinking that if you keep forcing yourself to doing the opposite of what you used to do, then that becomes the normal? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, instead of for instance, on a Friday, the sun's out, I'd normally go down the pub. If I just stopped doing that for a long period of time,
I think you do rewire your brain It's
Yeah.
like neuroplasticity, and you essentially create new pathways within your mind. And then, I think it does work like that generally.
Is that right? Would you?
Sorry, I jumped in.
No, go for it. Absolutely, yeah. Which is why, like I have my podcast, you've got your podcast, like every day or most days in a week, we're talking about it in a different way. You're like literally
In a positive way.
Yeah, you're training your brain to think about alcohol in a different way. So you're creating new neural pathways, and those old pathways, if you like, they are becoming more disused. They're becoming like less reactive to them because you're creating more evidence of why you're choosing not to drink.
So you're actually talking about it on a deeper level. I'm just talking about it on like doing things.
Yeah.
You're talking about how you actually think about the alcohol, right? So I read a really good book as we're exchanging books, and I'm sure you probably read it, but it was No More Hangovers by Alan Carr. Have you seen it? It's like a little bite-sized book. I don't know if you've seen it.
Not a little one. I've read the Stop Drinking one that he did. Though.
Yeah. Well, this No More Hangovers. Anyone out there that's listening, anyone that ever comments like, "Oh, what should I do first?" or "How can I start?" My counsellor gave me this book, No More Hangovers by Alan Carr, and the reason why it works so well for me, and I think it's what you're talking about, is it had little analogies. It was like page after page after page after page of analogies, right? Going, well, imagine if you were like this, would you do this? Well, that's what alcohol's doing to you. Imagine if, like, it was like, if
The flower one, do you remember that?
yeah, that was a big one for me. So it was like, alcohol can grip you, like, right now you might be drinking, just at the weekends and and whatever, or just occasionally, special occasions. But like for me, like it was when things went wrong in my life, my drinking increased, right? It was because whatever I got from drinking, I thought would help me when things got worse, whatever. And there comes a point where some people tip over that edge, right? Where their alcohol dependency, they're drinking, they're hungover, they wait a little bit, they drink again to feel better from hungover, where it just turns into a cycle where they're constantly drinking. And then that's where your stereotypical alcoholic comes into play, that's clutching a bottle of vodka first thing in the morning. And the way he had this analogy of one of these plants that has the flies go into it, and they drink the sap, drink the sap, drink the sap. But if they go too far in to drink it, is it flies? I don't know what it was. Yeah. Or whatever. It goes too, they get tangled in the sap and they can't get out.
Yeah.
But you'll never know when that's going to be. You never know where it's going to be. And it was little analogies. And there was another analogy. I'm just sharing this for the listeners as well. But there was another analogy where, talking about losing control of yourself when you're drinking, what do you get from it? Do you like the feeling of escapism, of being a bit wild? And that was what it was for me, Woo! It's been a stressful week. I'm going to get fucked and not give a shit about anything. And, and you lose control of your functions and the way you walk. And it's like, but it's okay because it's fun. And then they swap that analogy for like, well, imagine if you was in an aeroplane and, because the controls, there was an analogy about that where the controls, would you trust yourself? Would you, if you were the pilot and you're just like, oh, I'm just going to play with the controls a little bit, here and there, tweak them with a little bit of alcohol so I can't exactly work correctly. Anyway, all of these analogies made me think about alcohol in a different way. And it was literally like I put the book down the first time I read it and I was like, fucking hell. I've been tricked into thinking that this thing was brilliant for me.
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
100%, mate. Yeah. And that's in This Naked Mind, there was something in there that really stuck out with me as well. I'm quite visual as well. So like stuff like that really helps me. But in the book, she spoke about how alcohol is ethanol. And that's not an opinion, that's a fact, right? Like ethanol is fuel, right? Like it's used as an additive for fuel that we use for planes and cars and stuff like that. And I was like, fuck. Yeah, right. Like why am I putting that into my body? Yeah. But think about it, man. Like hand sanitizer, 100% alcohol. What does that do?
Burns your hands.
Annihilates everything on your hands, yeah. But yet we're drinking like obviously lower levels,
10%,
5,
yeah.
10, but sometimes spirits are a lot more. But even when you drink spirits, right? Like I always used to feel sick once I drank a spirit. That's your body's literally like,
no,
saying, yeah, this isn't right. Like we shouldn't be doing this. This is poison. But we've kind of been conditioned to believe that it's how you go out and have fun on a Friday night.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Keep talking to me about how you change these people's minds, other things you use. I really feel like these little nuggets and stuff kind of help, What else is critical to a man when a man comes to you trying to get through the process and changing his thinking?
One of the biggest things I do is like right early on when I'm working with the guys, look at their values. Values, what are the things that are most important to you in life? What matters to you? And, very often family, business, things like that come up first. And then we go through this process of identifying what they are. And then we look at, okay, so how does alcohol conflict those?
That's so interesting. You're just getting them to work it out themselves.
Yeah, 100%. Like I give them the tools and they have to like figure it out for themselves, get them to kind of start rewiring their brain, start thinking about it differently, because by doing that, you start unlearning the desire. Like, because now you're no longer thinking alcohol is this amazing thing that does all these good things. You're actually going, oh, actually, when I drink alcohol, I'm not a good dad. Or when I drink alcohol, I've lost lots of jobs. Like, we can start seeing like the patterns of how it shows up, because every time alcohol conflicts with your values, there's no question.
John, mate, it's so interesting, isn't it?
No, definitely. I mean, just taking all that in, I was thinking about, so you start with, sorry, I'll get the camera. I'm a bad producer. Look, let's be honest. So you were talking about when someone comes to you, you work out what their values are. Yeah. Is that part of like a bigger structure of like their beliefs, or just what they're focusing on now, so their work and their family, or is it to do with like health? Yeah. Do you kind of like? Yeah. Yeah. Is it just to do with alcohol, or is it just to do with like everything, what they value?
Well, it is everything, but then we look at it in the relationship to alcohol as well. So
do you exclusively do alcohol related life coaching, or is it?
Yes,
yeah, okay.
That's how it starts.
Yeah,
right. Yeah. Like everyone comes in wanting to stop drinking, and then we open it up, right? Because it's an ecosystem, man. Like everything's going on in our lives is contributing to why we might be drinking. For example, you mentioned stress and stuff. So yeah, understanding what the values are, and then we've got beliefs about those values, and then we can start like really unpacking it and looking at it all. And it is amazing, man. Like just that one session sometimes is just
enough.
Profound. Yeah,
you untangle knots.
It's just right. Because now you can start living daily. Go, okay, so what's important to me? You know, and you're really aware of it. And listen, our values change over time. Of course they do, but that's why it's important to go back and revisit them.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough, isn't it? Because I feel like I've learnt that over the last year, and some of us learn it the hard way, right? Like at the beginning, you know, your missus is going to leave you, or you're going to lose your kids, or you've crashed your car, drink driving, or something like that, and you've lost your job, and then you're like, oh, what are my values, man? Money and fucking work and my family and stuff like that. And you found the hard way, and I think unfortunately, when I was faced with when I learnt them and really got my head around them, you know, and I do it as simply as I've said this to people before, you know, my kids, and it's literally like that for me. My kids and my wife here, and drinking and drugs there. Like, what do you want? Because you can't have them both. You just can't. You can't be a good father and a good partner, and you can't go out and drink, because I'm not built to just have one or two. I want to get annihilated. But the hard thing when you learn that information is looking at your friends around you that are making the wrong choice. So do you ever find with yourself that you struggle with people that you know that ain't after life coaching, that are your friends and family and people around you that are just making that wrong choice? Do you not feel like you've got all of this wealth of information that you want to share?
Yeah, and I also know that, you know, they just got to get on with it. They've got to find their own path. You know, sometimes people will be interested and they'll ask me questions and stuff, but you know, it's such a unique journey, isn't it? You know, and just kind of like you were saying earlier, like everyone's got a different entry point into it. You know, for me, waking up on the sofa, like I just chose that as my rock bottom. Like I knew I'd had enough at that point, but there'd been many, many other things that had happened before that. And I think everyone's just got to find their own way there, I know. And I think, you know, having this podcast and stuff that we do is really, really important, because it's getting people to start questioning it. Yeah. Yeah. But it can be challenging, right? Like you can see people, you can really, I was mentioning to you earlier, like when I'm around people drinking now, like it's so fascinating to actually watch them changing, actually thinking about like what is happening inside your brain now. You know, that cognitive part, that prefrontal cortex is starting to shut down. Like that's why you start making poor decisions. That's why that filters off. It's why you stay and do stupid shit, because you're no longer really thinking about what you're doing. And that's
scary, isn't it?
Really scary, man. And I just think, God, like.
That's why you go one or two ways when you see people that are, you know, mate, you've got to use it to your advantage. It's like watching Jeremy Kyle. You know, you've got to make it, let it make you feel better. You've got to fucking watch it and go, yeah, I'm glad that I'm getting out of this, or I'm glad I'm out of this. So once you manage to change their thinking and they're starting to be receptive to that idea, you know, and they start looking. Oh my God, it's so true when you're saying it. You've just got to change, because society. This is obviously well-known stuff. Society sort of plants the seed from when we're born. We're very young. We see our parents drinking, and if you imagine you're very young, and when you see all the family together, what they're doing, everyone's having a good time and they're drinking. Christmas, they're drinking. Christenings, they're drinking. Fucking funerals, they're drinking. And you're kind of like, oh no, you're not allowed to drink till you're older. When you're older, then you can drink. And then
It's how you become an adult in this country, really.
100%. It's a coming of age, right? Yeah, and you're waiting and waiting and waiting, and that's where that started for me. You know, when you're kids and you want to rebel, everyone's like, "Who can get drink? Who can get drink? Who can get alcohol?" And then that is celebrated. You're the one that can get the drink, and it's very hard to shake that. You know, every celebration, everything. You know, it's very hard to disassociate alcohol with good times and celebrating. So when you tell people, when you're doing this life coaching, I presume it's an ongoing thing with people, they stay for sessions and regular stuff, yeah?
Yeah.
How do you tell them to maintain that thought process? What tools can they take away in times of difficulty or to work on themselves?
Yeah, cool. Just on that, I got a bottle of cognac at home. I'm never going to drink it, but it was given to my mum before I was even born to give to me on my 18th birthday.
Really?
Wow. Like, that's what we're dealing with, man. Like,
That's fucking mental, isn't it?
yeah, it's crazy. Absolutely crazy.
This is for when he's old enough to fuck his life up.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes, predetermined. It's predetermined. It's like, it's so inevitable that, when they're 18, they'll drink this.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so in answer to your question, so I work with guys over a period of 6 months, right? Like, so we have weekly sessions. It's
Brilliant.
really important, I think, just to constantly having these conversations, you know, constantly surrounding yourself with other people who are thinking similar to you, which is challenging, right? Because, you know, when you're drinking, it's probably likely that your community, everyone around you is drinking. That's just how it is. So it's starting to go out and find new ways and new communities that you can start contributing to. You know, a couple of things that I did is, like, I started a Facebook group. I started doing my podcast. Like, they were all ways that really worked for me in terms of, like, keep thinking what I'm thinking about. And the guys I work with, like, I've got a WhatsApp group. Like, they all stay in there. They call up conversations in there about what's going on for them. Sometimes we can kind of overload on...
I did.
Yeah, like overload on these things. And I think not to beat yourself up for that either, right? Like, just to be mindful, like, just do it for as long as it's helpful for. Because then sometimes we get into that old comparing mind, right? We start thinking, well, why are they doing it so easily and their life's great? And, just start being a dick to yourself. But you just got to be mindful. I think journaling, you know, you probably hear that often, is such an important and powerful way just to hear or to see what you're thinking and go, well, that's a load of bullshit. Like, why am I choosing to think that about myself?
That's so true. You know, I've found before where, oh my God, man, I used to be I am such an overthinker, but also so insecure, and be like, all right, what's playing on my mind? What's playing on my mind? Like, if I'm getting really pent up, or like an afternoon's coming and I'm fucking, or whatever, loads, and I'm like, that's doing my head in, and so hasn't texted me back, and I'm wondering if he's got an issue. Read it back, you know. Oh, shut up, you knob.
Yeah.
Like, who cares? Like, but what that I find that when you get into a negative thought cycle, and a weird thing happened to me when I was right at the beginning of my sobriety. I went away to work on myself and all that jazz, and I kept having this thought about my wife, a weird thought, like a negative thought about what she thought of me, and and all these things, and it kept going around in my mind. But I became really conscious of it. Instead of it just being a thought, instead of it just being like, this is what I'm thinking, so this is reality, you know, this is how I feel. It was like it was almost like it was given to me to be aware of what my mind was doing to me.
That's super important. That's like the meta awareness. That's like being aware of your thoughts rather than just experience them as a constant stream. That's like super important with so many things.
It was weird.
Yeah.
Do you understand that?
Yeah, definitely, man. Yeah, like, we're not our thinking, you know.
Yeah.
We're not our thinking, and our brains having multiple hundreds, well, not hundreds, but like thousands and thousands of thoughts a day. Some say up to 60, 70,000 thoughts, right? Some of those thoughts you could have been thinking since you were a little child. It doesn't make them any more true now than they were then, right? So yeah, it's about understanding your own thinking, like really starting to question it and challenging it, right? Just because you think it doesn't mean it's true.
Yeah, like, so much bad stuff has happened to me in my life that's never happened. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So many, like, some of the worst shit that's ever happened to me in my life has just been a figment of my imagination.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So what else do you want to talk about? What else you got for us? I want some gold for the listeners out there.
Yeah, well, just on that, I think mounting out of molehills, right? Like often when some of the biggest things I work on with guys is their fear of what other people are going to say or do, right?
Yeah.
So going out with the mates, like, what am I going to do? Everyone's going to take this out of me and all of that stuff. And that, that whole spotlight thing, thinking everyone's watching them. So it's kind of working through that, recognizing people don't really care about you. Like, they might say something, but they're not going to go home and be thinking about you all night. It's
crazy, isn't it? It's crazy. You're on the train on the way home going, I wonder what them lot are thinking about me now. They're not.
Yeah, they're just not, man. And so it's kind of like working through those fears. And the way we could do that is, rather than just stopping at them going, oh, I'm afraid of it. Like, well, okay, so why are you afraid of it? What do you think is going to happen? Like, let's walk into that fear and have a real explore around. And then from that, you can start kind of giving yourself some armory, right? Like, well, what are my options? What can I say to people if they start challenging me? I don't know that, actually. Speak your truth. Like, I think for me, that's such a big thing. A lot of guys, not just guys, but people think they kind of
can't say what they feel.
Yeah, and they're not quite ready to tell people they're not drinking or that they're taking a break. And the challenge with that, I find, is that people can see that. They can like sense that you're not really sure, and they might try and encourage you to drink. I used to be that dick who used to do it. But, when you speak your truth, so when I stopped, people would ask me, why aren't you stopping drinking? I was like, it makes me feel like shit. Like, I can't do it anymore. People can't argue with that. They cannot argue with that.
Man, I think that's so important, because I'm a firm believer that one of the reasons why sobriety is so hard is because there's a massive stigma around going sober. It's like, if you go sober, it's like you were 100% an alcoholic or a degenerate or a loser, and what's your problem? What's your issue with, so what? I could have been in active addiction. It could have been consuming me, could have been my way. There needs to be more positivity about, more strength around. Well, not even that. It just needs to be normal. Like, for someone to just go, and I'll be honest with you, I'm a year in. This Friday coming, all my mates, like, we've got a WhatsApp group. I've got real close friends, but they're friends from school, right, since I was 14. But we all use drugs together, heavy, and they all still do. Bar maybe one of them, 7, 8 of them, they all still use and drink. Real close friends of mine, and they're in the group talking about the lads' birthdays, and they're all getting together. What time should we meet? Oh, let's do it earlier so we can get on the session earlier, and and all that. And I'm like, just straight away said, I'm out. I'm not coming. And part of me was like, why am I going? Is it because I'm not going to enjoy it because they're all drinking and using drugs, or is it because, which is probably more likely, that I don't want to explain myself? Like, they know I'm sober. I'm all over the fucking internet. They're probably sick to death of seeing me be sober, but I think it's more like just the conversation, like what you're saying. I can't be with the conversations about it. How do you get out of that mindset?
Yeah, why should you have to defend yourself? Like, it doesn't really matter. But I think that's the problem, isn't it? Because everyone goes to that mindset that, oh, that must be really bad, park bench, sitting on there with a brown paper bag kind of mentality. But anyone can get addicted, man. Like, it's a fucking drug.
Yeah, but the worst thing for me is when they go, oh, how are you finding it? Like it's shit.
Yeah, because that's their belief systems, right? All to do with sobriety. Sobriety is boring. People who can't drink are boring. Like, all of these really unhelpful things.
Yeah, when they go, how are you finding it being sober? I should be like, how are you finding it addicted to coke? I think they'd be like, just off, man. Like, do you know what I mean? Also, I've got a funny feeling that my friends think I'm going to try and like sobriety is like you can catch it. Do you know what I mean? Like that, or they think I'm going to run in there with a leaf blower with all their cocaine and go, come on. Like, I don't give a fuck what they're doing, and I'd never lean into someone's life. But then I say that, but then there is some of them where I'm like, I wish I could grab them and ring them by the neck and go, man, this is consuming you. You know what I mean? It's a real tough one to be in. But yeah, interesting. So where were we? I keep digressing into
I'll go wherever you go. Yeah, no, it is interesting, and I think people they're fearful of having those conversations. They don't want to look into it too much, right? Like, 'cause imagine that having projected back to yourself, like your mate stops drinking and everyone else is drinking. You kind of like, oh, maybe I'm drinking too much, or maybe I'm doing too much gear, right?
Yeah.
But that's it. I mean, I think have conversations with people, but like not with an agenda, you know, like not trying to change them. Like if you are worried about a mate, like say, look, mate, I'm really worried. That's fair enough. But you know, it's then for them to do something with it a lot of the time.
I think it's more like I don't want to be taken the piss out of as well. That's the thing, because I know everyone, but hey, you're not drinking and da-da. And I'm kind of like, I'm past that. It's not that I'm past that. It's just like I can't be fucked with it. And also, I think that unless I am drinking and sniffing gear, I kind of don't want to be there. Do you know what I mean? It's a weird one. Like, do you find that there's just some environments you purely don't want to be in now your life's changed?
Yeah, absolutely. Or just have an exit strategy. Like I'll go for a little bit and I'll leave early because, you know, things start changing. So, yeah, I think in the beginning, definitely, right? I wouldn't go to stuff. Like I wouldn't go to the bar at half time during football and stuff like that because I just didn't want to be around that environment. I think you have to do whatever works for you, right?
Yeah.
But like, you know, even now, like 4 or 5 years in, like I'm starting to reintroduce some of those things into my life and I feel good about it and I'm not fearful of being around alcohol. I'm not fearful of what other people are going to say and stuff. Also, there's a lot more acceptance now, you know, because people have kind of, that's a big point actually, is like people have to get used to your identity because they've known you as being, you know, such and such all your life, whatever.
They might feel awkward. How do we treat him?
Exactly, yeah. They're like, well, how's that going to impact me? Because we're all really, again, it comes back, we're thinking about ourselves.
Narcissists,
right?
don't we?
Yeah. So we're thinking about ourselves, like, how's it going to impact me? And then over time, like, either people are going to stay or they're going to go, you know?
Excuse me, I haven't been doing cocaine. I know, as soon as you sneeze, the comments going to be like, he's still on it. But yeah, man, yeah. I think, huge one there. I think I done a video this week, and I quite often speak about kind of like very much like what you're saying, like changing how you feel and think about it, but also like embrace the journey, the new journey, right? Like for me now, when things really changed for me were. I don't know if it was very similar for you, but it was like there was a tipping point where it was like I was like, oh, you know, this is hard. It's like you're mourning, right? It's like you're mourning the old job. I'm never going to do this again. I'm never going to do that again. I'm never going to go to Ibiza and fucking sniff lines off fucking Wayne Lineker's shoulder or whatever.
Yeah.
That's never actually happened. But no, but disclaimer. But no, you go through this whole process of going, oh well, I'm never going to do that. I'm never going to sit up talking with that person, or I'm never going to drink, or I'm never going to have a Sunday roast and then get smashed after with my mates. And I'm never. But like you say, if you can change your thinking, and there was a tipping point for me where something happened. I don't know where it was, where it went from like, fucking hell, this is so good. Like everything feels so good. It's starting to feel natural. I'm so glad I can do this. I'm so glad I can do that, and I can do that. Do you think that's like everyone has that, or?
Yeah, definitely. It's actually like one of the things I talk about with my guys, like the seesaw of change, right?
Really?
Because in the beginning over here, you've got all that. I'll do it to the camera. You've got all your beliefs, all your evidence, like everything associated with alcohol, and then over time, like you want to start tipping it, and then eventually it gets to a point where it goes like that. But sometimes it's going to go backwards, right? It's all part of the journey. But like keep giving yourself all that new evidence, creating all those new beliefs for yourself. And having appreciation for what you're doing, man. Like,
yeah,
positive. Yeah, I look back and like I'm so thankful to myself for making that decision to stop drinking. As hard as it was at the time, like as much struggle as I went through and all of the things, but like that was massive. Especially, you know, with me, probably with you, most of the people listening, like you might be the first one out of all of your mates who's making this choice or decision to like rethink or stop drinking.
That's even harder.
Yeah, and it's huge, and you should like have so much gratitude and appreciation to yourself for doing it.
Yeah, sometimes now it's very difficult not to be like condescending. Now it's very difficult to not be condescending with the information that I'm learning and like with the way that I look at life now.
Yeah.
Because like for instance, I've like the other day I had a lad messaging me going, mate, like I love your journey and what you're doing, and I'm fucking a lot of stuff up in my life with drink and drugs, especially the packet. But you know, how do you live like without going out with your mates on a Friday and a Saturday? Like how do you do that? Like, don't you miss your friends? And you know, like I don't know what I'll do without my boys and that. And I was like, how old are you, man? And he was like 45. I was like, you got any kids? He's like, yeah, I've got 4 kids. And I was like, well, who gives a fuck about your mates? Like, who gives a fuck? That's what I said to him. I was just like, who gives a fuck about your mates and what they're talking about and what's going on in their lives? You got 4 kids, mate. You're nearly 50. Like, and he was like, oh, okay, mate, yeah, I was just saying. And then I suddenly realised, mate, what you took a year ago, I was like, I can't stop drinking because I'm never going to see my mates again. And you know, a year and a bit ago, I was going, fucking hell, what if I can't spot? So I can't sit down a pub on a Friday night sniffing gear anymore. What am I going to do with my life? It's weird. It's hard to not be condescending.
Yeah. It's like you're on that other side of the fence, aren't you?
Yeah.
Like looking back, you're like, fuck that. Yeah.
Anything else you want to, we can chip in? I think you're a wealth of information, man.
Yeah.
In 6 months, I mean, and do you have like a success rate or anything? Or do the majority of people stay sober after they come to jail? And do some of them come in quite a tricky situation? Have you had many people come like...
Yeah, like guys come to me all different parts of the journey, right? Like some of them have already stopped and they want that accountability to keep going without alcohol and like unlearn, because... You know, I never want someone I work with or anyone really to get to a point where like they're just like, we call it white knuckling, right? Like just willpowering their way through, like not going to things because they don't want to drink versus like actually making a conscious choice like, well, I want to go to that thing or I don't want to go to that thing. So it's about unlearning all of that bullshit that you believe about alcohol, creating all those new experiences. Some of the guys, they've already started doing that, right? And they just want that accountability. Some of the guys, they're still drinking. Some of the guys are still drinking, right? It just depends. I think the biggest thing is that at the end of it all, I want you to not be thinking about alcohol in a sense, right? Like not missing out on what you think. What am I trying to say here? Like to radically rethink alcohol, right? Because when you're thinking differently, you're going to feel different. You're going to do different stuff.
Yeah, just sitting listening to you talk about alcohol, it's like, fucking what the fuck?
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Honestly, man, like it's crazy, like, and at the same time, I was so in it, man. Like my identity, I was a good fucking drinker, man. Like I was a geezer who'd go out, do all this stuff every night, not every night, but like every weekend, do as much as possible, first out, last out, you know, like. I think that's another thing is like we create this whole identity of us, and a bit like that guy with his mates, right? Like he thinks that's who he is.
That's his life.
What he does, yeah, exactly. But you need to break free from that, man. Like you need to start showing yourself different stuff. Like tomorrow's not happened. Like so, you know, why not go create something different for yourself?
That's so beautiful. Tomorrow's not happened. It doesn't have to be what you think it's going to be. It can be something else.
Yeah.
And you know, it's weird the terminology we use. Especially, I think it's really difficult for men that work on the tools or like physical labor throughout the week. You know, they literally like, I've earned a drink, I deserve a drink, I deserve the packet. You know, do you really deserve that? What do you actually deserve if you've worked really hard? You deserve to treat yourself better in your time off. That's real hard thinking to change. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, man. John, any questions? This is one of my like happiest podcast episodes.
Yeah, this has been sort
It's
of really
positive,
classic,
isn't
light,
it?
Yeah. Okay, so the question is, what is, if there is like a proper definition, what's the difference between life coaching and therapy? Because if someone's thinking about getting help, do you think, I mean, I guess you'd advise people go to a life coach or people go to a therapist, or I don't fully know the difference. I was just curious.
Yeah, good question, man. Like, so for me, life coaching is focused on the present and future, whereas therapy is kind of looking at the past. Now, there might be people out there that it could be really beneficial for them to get like some therapy towards it. Like the way I work is kind of therapeutic coaching. So there is a little bit of understanding the origins of some of your beliefs or things that come up for you. But yeah, generally speaking, coaching is about now and forwards.
That's very well articulated, isn't it? Just before I go, one thing that I found really interesting about what you were talking about that I haven't really heard is the way that we believe alcohol's good for us.
Yeah,
and changing them. What are some of the misconceptions that we train ourselves about? Do you understand the question? Do you know what I mean? I'm maybe not articulating it. What do we?
I do. Yeah.
What do we trick ourselves into thinking? What are the key, like the most common ones?
Well, I'm thinking that alcohol helps us relax, which it does in a sense, right? But let's remember it's also a sedative and a depressant,
yeah.
Right? Like, because you know it does help you relax, but it's very short, and then you get that anxiety that comes afterwards, right? Like you start withdrawing from the alcohol. And then there is alcohol is ethanol. I think that's the fact I mentioned earlier. I think that's huge. But people don't really associate what they're drinking. They just think it's a drink.
Tasty.
Yeah, they just think, tasty.
Refreshing.
That's another really common belief, right?
Yeah,
Alcohol's fun, you know? Like, there's all of these really beliefs, really, when it comes to alcohol. Like, alcohol is... What's another one?
makes you like more
Sociable.
confident, makes you, like some of the reasons I used to drink is because I've wanted to be more confident. I wanted to speak to girls and stuff. But then I'd drink so much that I couldn't talk, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I've had some, like, I find life is really, really different for me now in a big respect to, if I like ego, alcohol is ego to me, right?
Yeah.
In the way that if I was to go into a party or a social event and that, I would try and be the center of attention. I'd drink and I'd be like, woo, what's going on? You're right. Yeah, you good. What's going on? Have you seen this trick? Have you heard this joke? Ha, hello, ladies, and all that. Now, when I go into social environments, I like sitting at the side. I like sitting quietly. I like having proper conversations and stuff like that. And I definitely am more likable. I've got to be, So when you say that, when people do say that, alcohol gives me my edge and makes me more likable and stuff like that, that's probably false.
Yeah, it's massively false. Another one there is like alcohol helps me to connect with people. Does it? Fuck.
Yeah, over and over again, the same thing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. So but this is it. Like, we've all got different flavors of the same beliefs about alcohol and what we think it's doing for us. So I think that's where we start doing that kind of like itinerary of like, what do I believe about alcohol? What do I think it does for me? Because that's going to show you what you're believing. Why do you think you couldn't go out without alcohol? Again, that's going to show you what you're believing. And the more you become aware of all of those beliefs, the more choice that you've got around them.
Yeah, the interesting thing is, before we finish up, is that you say, you should look at this and you should do that. How many people out there would actually sit and do that? Because I know I wouldn't until I've been on this journey. I would like that is the key to it, is to dissecting your thinking. Like anyone watching this, give them a task to do. Go on, like you said, sit down and write what you think you get out of alcohol.
Well, I'll tell you 3 questions that I ask my guys before they start working with me. Why do I drink? Why do I want to stop drinking? And what do I think will get in the way? And to answer those without filtering, just like put down every reason, whether you think it's good, bad, whatever, right? Because when you write all of that down, you're going to see all of those things. None of them are facts, right? Like, a lot of them are just your thoughts about what you're doing and why you want to do it. Well, maybe they're not drinking, but definitely the why you're drinking.
Ask me them again. So what was the first
one?
So
why are you drinking?
So why am I drinking? Because I enjoy it, right?
Yeah.
What's the next one?
Why do you want to stop drinking?
I don't really enjoy it because it keeps getting me in trouble.
Yeah, right. And then, like, what do you think is going to get in the way of you stopping?
Social events.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
I say, like, now all of a sudden we're starting to see, like, okay, so these are all the things that are keeping me here.
So I really, if I was to look at that like analytically, or I don't know what the correct wording is, I could go, right, well, I ain't going to go to social events for a little bit, and the other two kind of outdo each other, didn't they?
Yeah.
So. Yeah, you could start creating a plan around it. It's interesting stuff, John.
What actually, can I just quickly say then, like, because that's another thing, right? Think about how much fucking planning goes into drinking. Think about all the years that you've been planning drinking. Like, it makes sense that you might have to plan to stop drinking.
Yeah.
Every Tuesday, even though I was feeling crap, I'm thinking about Friday already.
Mate, it's so true. It's so true. I mean, what's more difficult, staying in, watching TV and being sober? What's actually more difficult to organise, that, or getting down the pub, getting your mates together and ordering a packet?
Getting that phone in, yeah.
Yeah. Who's going to get? Oh, we need 5 each, 10 each. Yeah, it'll be in 20 minutes. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, right. And then getting anxious if it ain't going to happen.
Yeah. Actually, the best. Just going into it, one of the weird things that I've realised now when I especially when I look back at my cocaine consumption, which I still can't believe that I talk so openly about. My kid's going to watch this one day probably. Is the best part for me was the thought of getting it and ordering it.
Yeah,
anticipation.
The anticipation.
I hear that all the time, man.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
Like, are we going to get it? Yeah, who's making a call? Oh my God, that was bad. Oh, I want to go home.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
It's weird. And then you're just chasing that feeling all night long.
Yeah. Do we get dopamine before?
Yeah, you actually do.
Yeah,
you get a big spike. That's called the anticipation response. That's why, like, when you're walking through a supermarket and you see like chocolate and you get that, you're not eating it yet, but you're thinking, oh, I could get that. That's kind of why it's so kind of almost like tricky that they put it out there because they are just spiking. That's what an advert is. It spikes your anticipation response, gets a big spike of dopamine, and that motivates you to go do it. That's why it's so enjoyable. But yeah.
We're so easily influenced. Like we think we're making all these conscious choices all the time, but we're not. Like it was just this morning I was watching Instagram something. The girl was having a coffee, and I thought, oh, I want a coffee now. It was like that hadn't even entered my thought system until I saw that video. And then, like when we think about that in the context of alcohol, right? Like all of the marketing we get, just on the underground on the way here, they've got some fucking stupid adverts about. What does it say? Like, be careful drinking, and then they've got like the writing on the advert all wobbly when you're walking down the escalators. Like, is that it? Be careful drinking. What about like all of the other shit that alcohol causes, right?
Nah, that's so crazy, isn't it? And all of the adverts, like when I see an advert on the tube, which I always do, of Jack Daniels, everyone's having so much fun around it.
Exactly.
I have never drank Jack Daniels and not been a complete mess. I used to drink that. Like
that advert wasn't as popular though. They tried it.
Yeah. That ain't going to show you shitting yourself or punching someone in the face, are they?
No, man. Puking up in a bath.
No. Oh man, well that's been really, really fun, and I've got to admit, I was excited to have a chat with you because to me, the key to sobriety, I believe, and also so much in life is managing your thoughts. And I think I said this to you outside, there's so much, like we're not taught it as kids that we can manage, our thoughts. Like we're not taught it. Like the first time I ever heard, I got an inkling of being able to manage my thoughts was when I spoke to Robert Heisey when I was training for an MMA fight, and he was going into I was having these weird thoughts of losing. I mean, I did lose the fight in the end, so it fucking didn't work. But I mean, my anxiety was from what I thought was going to happen, not what was happening anyway. He managed to train, visualization and all of this jazz. And I think at the beginning of my sobriety, there's two ways that you can look at when you get all your feelings and your emotions back that you've been suppressing, but you get that really overwhelming, like it's fucking weird. Basically, when you're in the years of drinking and using drugs, you're never fighting it, right? You're just responding to it.
Yeah.
So I really felt like the urge to drink early on, and I was so like, whoa, mate, what the fuck? This is mad. Like I'm really struggling not to go out, like, and not to say fuck you and press the button. Like I'd never felt it before. You don't feel it until you go sober, do you? Right?
Yeah.
You don't feel it because the rest of the time it's just a flitting thought and you act on it.
Yep.
And it was then when I started working on that, working on the triggers. Could you give us any advice on what people can do when they're instantly triggered? Do you know what I mean? How to respond to like an overwhelming compulsion to drink right there and then?
Yeah. Well, I think that's part of the planning process, right? Like is having things to prepare yourself for that. I mean, breathing, man, like it's such a fucking
slows everything down.
It's just an amazing thing. Like just taking some breaths, just like reminding yourself where you are, just like
who you are.
Yeah, just like that's a bottle, that's a table, that's a card, that's Dan. It changes.
Get out of your head.
Exactly, because now you're not thinking about having a drink, like you're focusing on something else. So that's really, really powerful. I think, so breathing, it really depends in the situation. Like if you're out and about, well, breathing would be great because no one's going to see you doing that. But if you're at home, you might be able to go and do like 5 minutes mindfulness or go for a walk. Generally speaking, we want to be able to like be with our feelings and like tell ourselves like, all right, I'm having
feeling this.
Yeah,
I'm
like
feeling
talk
it.
yourself through it, right? Like coach yourself through it. Literally, like I'm having an urge. Like it's okay. I'm not going to die, right? But that's what your brain thinks. It's like if I don't get this, like something real bad's going to happen because it's that energy in it. It's like comes up. It's like
it's fucking
it just
brutal.
needs a way to like move through.
That's
instead of reacting to it.
That's the biggest thing. That's the big. I got in my DMs. I can't, mate. I can't. I don't know how you do it. I can't. And that's because we've never ever I hadn't up until last year or whatever. We never considered there's an alternative than to act on our feelings.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's like the concept of I'll have.
Yeah.
The concept of breaking that is alien to us.
Yeah, or I haven't done it before, therefore I can't do it. Well,
Yeah.
how do you know?
Yeah. Or just and just realizing, I don't know, you're probably better at articulating it than I am, that just because the thought and the feeling is there It doesn't have to be acted on. It's not real.
Exactly. And that's where we want to disrupt it. Like, that's where we want to stop it. So you have the thought feeling, but then like, let's not take that action, because there's two paths, right? Like, you can go drink or you can not drink. And every time you're not drinking, like, that's the unlearning process taking place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that it's important to do other... am I right in thinking that you can train your mind by doing other uncomfortable things?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, like I see you love a little bit of a cold water plunge and stuff like
I'll
that.
jump on any trend to get some views. But not just that, but the boxing as well for me, heavy sparring and like...
Yeah, it's just finding outlets for that energy, right? Like, he wants to do something.
But more I'm thinking more of like my mind telling me no, and this, I'm trying not to do an R. Kelly lyric here.
That's why my brain went right there.
It will do. Yeah, but and actually, if you think about the fucking meaning behind that now, no, but quite simply, I got into the routine. Started off with my mornings, the 4:30 wake ups, which I do every day now, even at the weekend. My wife fucking loves it, as you can imagine. No, I don't want to get up, do it. No, I don't want to get up, do it. Oh, I don't want to spar today, it's going to be scary, do it. I don't want to do the cold water dip, do it. I don't want to go for a run, do it. And then I want to drink, don't do it. Was easy. Well, not easy, but easier.
I think you can build up your willpower like that. Like, it's almost like a muscle. I read a book on willpower, and there are certain things like that. When you do hard things, you almost build up your capacity,
resilience,
for just in general. So so if you do one hard thing, you do get better at doing effectively all hard things. You have that extra capacity.
But also, and I'm digressing here, but I find this stuff so interesting. I knew I was going to enjoy this, but also seeing a voice in your head.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Not like instead of going, I don't want to get up, so I'm not going to get up. Going, I don't want to get up. I'm going, who's that? That's not me. Just because you said that, don't mean... Do I sound mad? Just because you said that, don't mean I have to do that.
No,
actually, I'm going to choose something else. Interesting stuff.
Yeah, wicked, man.
Anything you want to add before we go? Where people can find you and all of that jazz?
Yeah, sure. So if you want to find me, I'm on Instagram and Facebook as the Alcohol Rethink Project. So Facebook's a group, Instagram's just follow me. I've got the podcast, the Alcohol Rethink Podcast. Brilliant. And patrickjfox.com is my website if you want to go check that out.
And anything else anything you want to add?
Well, I would say one other tool that I use with my guys, and we kind of like been talking about it a lot in a sense, is the 3 Ps of sobriety, I call it.
Okay.
And that's planning, practice, and patience. Right? If you've been drinking for years and years, as I said, right, it's going to take a bit of time to start unlearning that in yourself. So you have to plan for it, right? Whether it's for an urge, whether it's going out to beer with your mates, whether it's going to a wedding, whatever it might be, start planning what those things could look like, and then practice them, right? Like, put them into practice, experiment with it, like notice what happens. Like, but you have to be so reflective, I find, on this journey. Well, the more reflective you are, the better, is what I'd say.
Yeah.
And then also patience, right? Because
takes time.
Yeah, like our human brain, man, like we just, especially as we were talking about earlier, right? Like, we want instant gratification. Like, I need it, I'll get it now, right? But we need to be able to just sit with that discomfort of wanting something and not having it.
Yeah, because it will dissipate.
Yeah, it's not going to be around for a long time, right? Like, sometimes it's a minute, 10 minutes, maybe it's a little bit longer, right? But it's not going to stay.
That's such good, valuable advice, that the triggers and the urges pass. Really, really important stuff. Thank you so much, Patrick. Thank you.
Yeah,
mate.
no, I've enjoyed it, man.
This is what this podcast is about. Is someone you never know. Someone might listen to this and go, "What the f are they going on about?" But one person or a couple of people might go, "I'm going to use that," and it's those nuggets of information that can set someone on the trajectory to stay sober. So thank you. I'm going to put your details in this, guys. You can find it. But Patrick, thank you, and thank you for the card.
Yeah, pleasure, and thanks to everyone. Been a great time.
Thank you. And what's the podcast called again?
The Alcohol Rethink Podcast.
Right, Alcohol Rethink Podcast. I'm going to have a listen and see what I can steal out of that and change as my own information. No, I'm joking. Thank you, Patrick. Brilliant. Right, get me on this camera. Am I on this one?
Yep.
All right, wicked. Thank you very much, guys. Make sure you check out Patrick on his socials. Big shout out to John. Thank you for your help today.
Thank you for having me. Been a lot of fun. Very informative.
Yeah, and from you as well. Always learning from you, my friend.
I'm a nerd.
Yeah, definitely. Good luck at that wedding, you said. No, I'm joking. All right, yeah, wicked, man. Listen, I just want to say a big thank you. Year sober and still going strong on the podcast. Learning. I'm going to keep... Let me know in the comments what you want more of. This is an organic organic journey. For those of you that are listening on Spotify, feel free to DM me on Instagram with any ideas, what you like. If there's anything you don't like, keep it to yourself. No, I'm joking. Just let us know, if you want me to incorporate some of the voice notes more and stuff like that. But listen, this is what it's all about. Patrick coming on here and giving us some information that we can take away. Make sure you check him out on socials, and sharing is caring with this podcast. If it's helped you, it can help someone out. Thank you very much. That was Menace to Sobriety. I'm out. Hello! We are going to take the Menace to Sobriety to the live stage, and we need a live studio audience to interact with us, to come along, listen, laugh, and learn everything about sobriety, mental health, well-being, and just come along for a night out with like-minded people. We are going to be going live on the 30th of August, 27th of September, 25th of October, and the 29th of November. That's one a month. Get your tickets now. Come down, meet the team, and have some fun. Menace to Sobriety Live, coming soon. Oh yes, and don't forget, if you want to come and see me live and meet me, I'm going on tour. The Daniel O'Reilly Out of Character full UK tour kicks off in January 2024, and tickets are on sale right now. I'm going to try and get out and meet as many of you as possible, and of course, I'm going to be bringing the laughs all over the UK. There's 23 dates right now, and I'm adding more all the time. Hit the link in the bio and get your tickets now and come have some fun. If you're going through a tough time at the moment, please don't suffer in silence. Feel free to pick up the phone and contact any of these helplines. I personally, myself, at one of my darkest points, contacted the Samaritans, and it completely changed my outlook and got me out of a really deep, dark place. A problem shared really is a problem halved. So if you don't feel confident talking to those around you, check out any of these organisations and give them a call. This is my Facebook group. Just simply search on Facebook, Men and Their Emotions. It's for men only, but once you're in there, you can talk anonymously about your problems and help others and just feel a little bit of community. So come join the conversation, Men and Their Emotions, on Facebook. Thanks for watching.
Menace to sobriety. Just a menace. Just a menace. Just a menace. Menace to